The first Lake Harriet Pavilion was called the Grand Pavilion. The Grand Pavilion was built in 1888 and was designed to host entertainment, dances, and had a refreshment room that seated up to 500 people. The pavilion was advertised in many posters that promoted daily opera performances as a most charming resort to spend your holidays and evenings. Unfortunately, it was hard for the pavilion to draw a crowd because it was built closer to the railroad station than it was to the lake. So the railroad was often a much bigger draw. However, most ministers protested the operas because they were performed during the Sabbath. Ultimately, this continued protest ended up canceling many other opera performances at the pavilion. This first pavilion only lasted 4 years. However, it was destroyed by a fire in 1892. This allowed the Minneapolis Street Railroad Company, which owned the railroad that was near the lake, to build a new pavilion right on the lake shore, which would attract more people. The second pavilion was called the Pagoda Pavilion and was built less than a year after the Grand Pavilion was burned down. The Minneapolis Street Railway Company leased some land on the lakeshore from the Minneapolis Park Board to build a new pavilion in a much better location. They hired architect Harry W. Jones to build it, and it was designed to look like a traditional Chinese pagoda. It also had a special bandstand that floated out on the lake. It was built pretty quickly, in only a month, and was popular right from the start. It was so popular, in fact, that even more seating was added, creating enough seats for almost 3,000 people. The pavilion also had a lower level for dining and drinks. It drew large crowds, and there was even a Shetland pony track that was built nearby. Then in 1902, a storm ripped the floating bandstand from its anchor and floated it out into the middle of the lake, where it was destroyed forever. Then, only a year later, an electrical fire burned down the main building. There's still remnants of this pavilion, as the bathrooms that are only a short walk from the current bandshell are actually the bathrooms and changing rooms from the original Pagoda Pavilion. The Minneapolis Street Railway gave up on Lake Harriet, and so the next pavilion was built by the Minneapolis Park Board with much deliberation for care and planning. Built in 1905, it was again designed by Harry W. Jones, but was a very different style. The People's Pavilion was in the classic revival style, and part of it hung out over the edge of the water. The building itself had 2 wings, a central area, and rooftop seating for almost 2,000 people, with a bandstand for concerts. There was also a big boat dock built right next to the building. This rooftop bandstand was terrible acoustics. However, it was removed, but the rooftop concerts continued. Then in 1912, it was determined that the roof could not support the weight of the people, and the concert moved inside the central concourse of the pavilion. The Lakeshore Pavilion and activities around it continued to draw huge crowds for its completion. There was high dive competitions, car and boat rentals, and a cafe and drink stand in the pavilion, and even ostriches on display. Then in July of 1925, a violent windstorm destroyed the pavilion and scattered debris everywhere, tragically murdering the mother and a child. After the People's Pavilion was destroyed, the Minneapolis Park Board put together what they thought would be a temporary bandshell, something to placate the community while they thought about the solutions to the problems of why the previous bandshells had not worked. This temporary bandshell ended up lasting longer than any of the other ones before it, staying standing for 58 years, only taken down to make way for the current bandshell that stands today. The planning of the current bandshell began in 1984, with Milo Thompson hired to design the building. He used Harry Jones's sketches and designs from the Pagoda Pavilion to inspire the current bandshell. There was an advisory committee created to help with the design process of the bandshell, which was constructed in 1984. The committee took into consideration the wishes of the people and made seating arrangements for only 900 people to reduce crowd sizes in the Linden Hills area. The bandshell was actually originally painted light blue until Mark Goen, developer, organized a volunteer free restoration of the bandshell. All of the buildings, including the bandshell, were restored and repainted light brown.
Lake Harriet has been a cultural center for Minneapolis for over a century. Starting with opera concerts, the events and buildings on Lake Harriet morphed and changed with the culture over the years into what we have today. The style of each building and its accommodations can be represented by the culture at the time. The first building held fancy opera concerts that were only available to the wealthy and the privileged. Then the second building became more accessible to the middle class as Linden Hills became a more established neighborhood. The Paganda Pavilion was a hub of culture and entertainment as thousands gathered to see concerts every day. The building itself, with changing rooms and a restaurant as well as a pony track, is representative of the culture of the time. The culture shifts some with the People's Pavilion, built in a classic revival style. It shows the trend in design at the time. There were changing rooms as well as a continuation of the culture from the previous building. However, there was a smaller cafe-style restaurant, which was a small shift away from the fancier lifestyle, as the pavilion was designed to accommodate more middle class and less of the elite class. The activities surrounding the pavilion had changed too, as boating and cars became more accessible with the boat and car rental. This shows a change in the accessibility of technology like cars in the 1920s. Then, finally, with the current bandshell, this shows the focus on creating a long-lasting, effective, and well-planned building where each detail has a purpose. The style of the open-air bandshell is reflective of the culture that developed by the 1980s of park appreciation and a growing popularity in outdoor events today. The bandshell is a center for people and all cultures to come together and celebrate the natural beauty of the lake. With concerts and performances every day, these showcases can range from jazz bands to Native American traditional dances to orchestra concerts and bring everyone together looking to enjoy all aspects of our diverse lifestyles. The bandshell is more than just a stage. It is a hub of entertainment and celebration of the legacy left by the previous bandshells, as well as the lake itself.
Thank you for watching.